Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and today I'm absolutely delighted to have as my guest Josh Whiton. Josh is a self-described techno-ecologist working to really repair or harmonize technology with the biosphere of the Earth and to help repair the Earth and our relationship to it. And at an earlier stage in life, created a tech company that really helped people move away from really driving in their isolated automobiles, working with public transport to reduce carbon footprint and reduce emissions in the environment, and really won an award from the Obama administration as a champion of change. So Josh, I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for being with us. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world, championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, as I go through this, it's interesting. As I was reading through your stuff, it was very reminiscent of going back to the 1970s when James Lovelock really created that Gaia Principle, where he was really looking at the Earth as a self-regulating organism that we've kind of lost touch with, and how all of these processes of the Earth, whether it's geological, biological, et cetera, really, again, have feedback loops that tend to regenerate itself and maintain the health of this organism. And of course, as a physician, we're focused on that within human bodies. And I love the fact that you're kind of focused on that within the body of the Earth. Talk about your early development, if you can, and what prompted you and what inspired you to move in the directions that you did.
Sure, I'll do that. And just to riff off of your analogy for a moment, though, so many of the troubles we're seeing on the planet might be even viewed as an inflammatory response by the planetary body itself, right?
Yes.
Anyways, so I've really just been a self-taught learner since I was young. And even though I studied computer science in university, when they made me pick something, they said, which one of these things are you? But I really had a love for technology and for nature since I was a child. If I wasn't taking apart electronics, I was catching tadpoles and watching them develop, and catching every kind of insect you could think of, and looking at everything under a microscope or magnifying glass when I was younger. And yes, eventually went off to school and studied computer science, and then didn't like the big company that I was working for. I knew I didn't belong in a big company. And so upon graduation, I immediately started a tech startup, and we upgraded public transit systems all over the world using technology. And that led to some financial freedom. And then with my free time, I started just looking around for more problems to solve. And wow, the food system ended up being this glaring problem that was right under my nose. It was probably hurting my health, but I didn't quite notice all that much in my mid-20s. Although growing up, I had all kinds of health conditions, as I'm sure you hear all the time, that we're told are just normal. And it was also harming the health of my family members. And so I just really got into food system issues, local food, pesticide-free, organic food, so on and so forth. And the journey has never really stopped.
So you adopted through that time living in a more plant-exclusive way. Was that something that translated for you then that way?
So I'll tell you, this is a very fascinating avenue to go down, because even though I was so focused on health and nutrition for the longest time, I would say that I was initially part of the paleo community and that whole movement. And as you know, with almost any diet, people start feeling better because they're just cutting out the junk food, right? So it's hard to pin down at first what's causing the benefits. And so for a great number of years, I was under the impression that we probably did need animal products in our diet to be healthy, and so on and so forth.
And so did that translate into you achieving some other status of health that was a feedback for you to say, wow, I'm on a really good track and this is something I need to follow?
Absolutely. In fact, one of the ways that I figured out how to eat more vegetables was with green smoothies. This was just, I couldn't chew anymore. I had so much plant matter coming out of the garden at this time. And so I thought, well, let's get the blender to help out here. And I would make green smoothies. And I'm not kidding you, but I and also my friends, we started to feel almost high after drinking these smoothies. Because if you can think of us, I was fresh out of college, just still a few years, but college students are oftentimes surviving on like garbage. It's really a testament to the human body that it's able to do anything with the food we're putting in our bodies back then. And so getting all those, I don't know what you want to call them, phytonutrients and nutrients in general, especially we were growing them in healthy living soil that we created ourselves. My body just was singing when I would drink these smoothies.
Yeah, from an ecological standpoint, when you shorten the food chain and you get closer to the sun, the initial energy that's available is off the charts. What happens to so many people as they start losing that available energy by moving away from those sources of food and now eating food or animals that are eating that food, there's always that loss of energy down that food chain, and there's a concentration of toxicity. So it's intriguing as you experience that when you shorten that food chain, get closer to the way things grow in nature, that the energetics of that, the availability of that is so off the charts. And it is like being high. It is like getting high. And
Yeah.
the truth is, for many people, as much as we talk and lecture about increasing the use of greens and vegetables, the truth of the matter is most people don't get enough. So sometimes smoothies and things of that nature are actually a great way, even with children and teenagers, for getting this kind of nutrition into their lives more effectively when they probably would not eat the volume that would probably be in their best interest to do. So it's kind of intriguing that you stumbled upon that and you turned on the neighborhood, so to speak.
Absolutely.
The college crowd. Yes, that college crowd.
And this was, this was over 15 years ago where I was living. Even when I traveled, people can't believe it now, but if you think back far enough, I'm sure you couldn't walk into a coffee shop and order, or a cafe and order a green smoothie. Nobody knew what that was. And so sometimes I would walk into a cafe literally and I'd say, okay, I see you've got fruit smoothies, good. And I see you've got salads, good. Here's what you're going to do. I'm going to buy both of them and you're going to put it all in the blender for me. And people would freak out. They'd never seen vegetables, put in the blender.
Yeah, now you
like
think
that
about
before.
the glut of juice bars and smoothie bars and everything that's escalated through the culture.
Absolutely,
it's pretty amazing.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting because when we talk about even personal health, in many ways, many of even the best meaning physicians and people are a little bit short-sighted because, when you have a pathology, you tend to become very self-centered. Your life becomes filtered through your own pain and your own discomfort. So you don't have what some people might call a spiritual connection, in the sense of spirit meaning you being concerned with something outside yourself. What are the consequences of what you're choosing to do, and how do they impact other things around us? So, this movement, as you get into the quality of the earth and the quality of the environment, I'm happy to see that that's becoming more of the mindset of people trying to make these choices, because for the longest time, it only focused on personal health. And I've always felt that was not good enough. And we know it's not good enough because we need to understand these ramifications. So in the work that you're doing, I love the fact that you're getting to the real root of where we have to be. And that's in the earth, in the soil, in the places where we're really creating those nutrients, where we're really creating that opportunity for the body to have high level wellness, high level energy, and high level health. So I think that's that's a direction that we kind of need to go in, so to speak, expanding that vision, that mindset a little bit.
That mindset, it's almost a type of consciousness sometimes. I think of it that way because it's, as you're saying, when you can't not see that the earth is a living creature and that it's being damaged while being very kind to us in so many ways. And so the question becomes, how do you get millions and even billions of people to have that sort of perspective, to have that sort of consciousness? Mm-hmm. And I think, having thought about this a long time, that it comes down to completing these feedback loops like we were talking about earlier. I think that the mind actually updates rather easily if you complete a feedback loop, if the feedback loop is tight enough and if the signal is strong enough. And so, of course, so many behavior problems that we have that we can't change just because we do the thing that's not so good, and the consequences are kind of 10 years away perhaps, and it's hard
Right.
to really connect those dots. So in this case, what I figured out in all these years of experimenting with urban agriculture and behavior change, my own behavior change, my neighborhood's behavior change, my family's, my community, I thought, what is the single quickest feedback loop that we can connect with people, for people, that they could do on a daily or weekly basis? And eventually it hit me that it was the act of creating new living soil out of the leftover food scraps that everybody had. Because everybody has leftover food scraps, especially plant-based people. They have some of the best food scraps in the world, really unprecedented. And if you can collect those and bring them together and steward them into new soil through the composting process, it really completes that feedback loop. You see yourself repairing the planet and regenerating the planet instead of destroying the planet. You touch the living soil and it feels so good. You do this with your neighbors and now you're connecting over something positive instead of negative. It's very unifying. So we can go on and on about that, but it's the feedback loop that I've honed in on now as something that we could be connecting all over the world.
But we're going to come back to that. I'm here with Josh Whiton, who was really embracing the idea of using technology to harmonize really the natural world, the soil, the earth that we live on. We're going to take just a few moments to hear from our sponsor, the National Health Association, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Health Science Podcast Show. I want to remind you to visit the National Health Association website, where you'll find incredible resources to support your healthy lifestyle, including plant-exclusive eating without added salt, oil, and sugar. Simply go to healthscience.org or nationalhealthassociation.org. Be sure to check out membership, which is only $35 per year for those living within the United States and $55 for those living outside the U.S. You'll be amazed at all the information and benefits you'll receive. As a member, you're kept up to date on the latest evidence-based tools for health promotion. You'll receive the incomparable quarterly magazine, Health Science, a beautiful 40-page advertising-free publication mailed to your home or offices, loaded with articles, recipes, inspirational stories, and interviews with world leaders in the fields of personal health, plant-based nutrition, water-only fasting, animal rights, and environmental support. And you'll receive details about life-changing events, such as the extraordinary annual conference of the National Health Association and diverse opportunities for plant-exclusive NHA cruises and travel vacations to exotic destinations around the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and now back to the show. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I'm here with Josh Whiton, and we're talking about the feedback loop of really putting back into the soil and helping people have their connection with the earth in a certain way. And I noticed that through your company or that website, soil.com, you've got this composting initiative. Talk a little bit about that more in depth. I noticed that it has. You talk about the fact that the organization does research, it actually does outreach, it does, and you're in like 70 countries doing this. So really paint that big picture for our audience so they can really understand what's going on with that.
Sure. So the website is makesoil.org, and it is a charitable initiative. It's a nonprofit. And what we're doing there, actually, you'll find it's not just outreach, it's not just information, it's actually a whole platform that we've built. A lot of technology has gone into this, where it's matching people all over the world to make new living soil together. So to really demystify it and make it super simple, we're finding just about every single person on earth we can find who is composting at home, by which we mean in their own backyard, in their side yard, in their front yard. They know how to do this process actually themselves. And we're getting them onto the platform, and then we match them with neighbors who have food scraps, and which is everybody. And so it turns out that somebody who's composting at home, they can handle the food scraps, not just of themselves and their family, but they can almost always handle at least one more family's food scraps in their home compost bin. And we have some soil makers on the platform who are handling the food scraps from 10 people or 15 people in their neighborhood, as well as community gardens and urban farms and churches and things like this. So it's really a movement to find everyone on earth who knows how to make soil, and then to match them with the neighbors who are realizing that, hey, they have food scraps that don't belong in the landfill. Those nutrients need to go back into the earth. And we're just connecting them, and beautiful relationships form out of that, and the platform manages everything.
Does that information or that setup generate any kind of database that you're using for research? I noticed that you talked about a research arm of what you do. Talk a little bit about what that is and how that's generated from this project.
So where we are now with it is we're figuring out how much waste diversion are we actually doing for cities. Because if you think about it, cities have always been stuck with either doing nothing, or maybe putting on a little class at the local library, or spinning up a $50 million curbside pickup program full of trucks driving up and down the street that don't get good gas mileage. So what we have with this new approach, where neighbors are doing this with each other in what you call distributed, decentralized manner, it's a rather new approach to scale that in a manner that a city actually could rely on, and that could make a difference in their sustainability plan. And so the research now is just how much can we actually divert in this distributed manner, and how can we calculate that properly? Because we really want to get away from the truck-based model wherever possible, because it's a lot of heavy industry to move banana peels and stuff around. So
when you are generating these healthier soils in these communities, do you collaborate with people that then discuss what to grow in those soils and what the benefit of what's growing in those soils? I mean, do you have any kind of outreach collaboration where it goes beyond that, the soil itself, into the bigger picture of what that means for overall health, well-being, for individuals and the earth itself?
Yeah. It might sound like we're myopically focused on soil, but that's not really the case, and it's a little bit by design. What we did is we found the one domino that when we tip it, the other ones tend to fall over automatically. So when people create new living soil together, they tend to want to grow food together. It's almost the next step in the journey, the journey of awareness, of awakening, of psychological development. They're now holding this new living soil, and they just feel the urge to plant a seed in it. And also quite often the soil sites, we call them, where all this is happening, where the soil maker is stewarding this is often somebody who is actually growing food on site. So as the neighbors are bringing the food scraps to the compost bin, to the soil site, they're noticing, wow, there's a lot of food growing at this place, and could I help? And could I take some seeds home to try for myself? And so the soil makers at these sites are almost always encouraging the participants to take some soil home themselves, to take some seeds home, or to get together and participate in food production there, in local food production. But that happens almost as a matter of course.
So the idea of sustainability is a natural outgrowth of that socialization around soil integrity and soil improvement, and people coming together to do that. Yeah, that's remarkable. I think it's a remarkable initiative. Because of your early interest in really changing carbon footprint, what you did with the transportation industries and so on, is this soil process also involved with any parts of your program that are involved with reforestation or carbon sequestering of the soil? Do you have any focus that happens with your outreach into that arena, or is that really not a focus of what you're involved in?
Sure. Yes and no. So it's not like we're making this soil in neighborhoods and then trying to get it into a forest or onto farmland somewhere. That's usually what people think at first. But really, that would defeat a lot of the purpose and would put a lot of carbon in the air if we tried collecting all this from houses and trucking it around. So we're really wanting to see a lot of hyper-local food production coming out of neighborhoods. There could really be millions and millions of more gardens and food production happening in the neighborhoods of all of our countries. So that's where it's going. As far as, let's talk about some more of the cascading benefits though. When a person stops throwing these food scraps into the trash, maybe for the first time in their life, and starts lovingly collecting them and taking them to one of these soil sites, maybe because they've watched a documentary, they've heard about the climate or something, so many things happen. For instance, we've seen people who have never really decided to purchase organic produce until they saw that those food scraps were no longer going into the trash. They were going into the neighbor's compost bin. And they said, gee, there's chemicals on those banana peels, aren't there? Maybe I should be buying more organic if it's just going to go into our little garden here. That's an example of a feedback loop that for many of us, it may seem more obvious, but honestly, you have to imagine those chemicals, right? You have to kind of have that awareness and faith that those chemicals are being sprayed on them. But for most people, it's a little bit out of sight, out of mind. And so, but when this happens, when this feedback loop happens, when they stop seeing that as garbage, they'll do things like start buying organic. And this is a point that I really want to make and drive home here, because sometimes in the plant-based and vegan communities and whatnot, you'll even find people saying, well, you don't have to buy organic. It doesn't all have to be organic. And of course, if a person is on their last dollar and, obviously can't afford organic, that's one thing. But this idea that it's okay to buy non-organic produce, the dirty dozen, they call them, or whatever, as long as it's not one of those, right? As long as it's a banana peel that you're not going to eat, and grapes, that's worse because you're going to eat the skin. No. Like at the plantation, at the farms where these are happening, if that pesticide is being sprayed, if that fungicide is being sprayed, it ends up in the groundwater, it ends up in the streams, it ends up harming nature. So anyone who has the budget to buy 100% organic, forget that it's another $1 or $2 a pound. Just please do it, knowing that that is affecting nature at large. So it's that kind of awareness that comes from participating in Make Soil, and that has, again, a trickling out kind of second and third order effect for the broader aspect of nature.
I'm here with Josh Whiton. Josh, if you can, let people know the best place to find you online. What is the location you want them to go to be able to follow you and learn more about what you're doing?
Sure. So anyone can follow me on any social media network by using @JoshWhitten. If you can spell my name correctly, then it's going to be the only Josh Whiton there, except for maybe, a fake account or something. But otherwise, that's me everywhere, @JoshWhitten, also at joshwhitten.com. And if you know how to compost, or you have food scraps that don't belong in the trash, then head over to makesoil.org or grab the app straight out of the App Store.
Yeah, one of the things I always tell people with children, when people are raising children and they talk about how are they going to influence children to make these kinds of better choices, plant-based choices that are more in line with supporting the environment, I always tell them that with kids, if they make it or grow it, they usually will eat it. And I've raised 5 children. And so this mindset that you have of helping this mindset of bringing people to the soil so they can see this process is very much like that, because, we tend to get divorced from, what we're eating. We put it on a plate in a way that it doesn't look anything like the devastation that's gone on to get it there. So we think, we've kind of become divorced from the abuse and the violence cycle. And so we don't really think about it. Here in reverse, you're doing something that I think is remarkable for information processing, because now you're seeing it at a grassroots level. You're contributing to the life of this soil. You're growing things in this soil. So, that whole pattern of processing information, I think, is fantastic. And I'm hoping that in this project, there's a lot of children that are involved, because this is going to be the future, what they themselves get involved in doing, because we're living and we've been around, and some of us will be around a long time and some won't. But the kids, I think early on, the more they can get in tune with this, the more we got a shot at really preserving this earth to a much greater degree. So in your program, you deal with children. Is there a children outreach, or do you see more of that happening with kids?
It's not that we're focused on children. We're focused on what we call healthy soil sites, which is anywhere where neighbors come together to do this. Now, children are quite often involved, and I can tell you that I've been at soil sites and I have seen just kids running up with a pail full of food scraps because dinner time is finished, and it's their job as part of chores to grab that pail of food scraps that they've watched, and helped save up over dinner. Because remember, the dirty napkins, the coffee grounds, all of it's going in there. And I've seen them, literally race each other to the compost bin at the soil site, dump it in, sprinkle some leaves on top, and run back home. And they do that week after week and every couple days, and they see that new living soil coming out of the bottom. They feel the heat coming off of it. They're getting that ecosystem consciousness
Yeah.
from participating in that. And I guarantee those young people will grow up to be very different than the ones who spent 30 years of the start of their life just touching plastic and metal and glass. So it's very important, and it happens.
Yeah. So, you know, that's a very important mindset that goes on through all of that. Moving from that, I was very fascinated, and I'm going to shift gears just a little bit because
Sure.
I don't want to leave the soil completely, but I know of your connection and your writings related to AI, and I wanted to touch base with you just a little bit, if you don't mind, in
Yeah,
relationship to AI, because,
sure.
you know, we're at a crux now, and I read your article on the Sydney GPT-4. I thought it was fantastic because
Oh, wow.
my background, I'm coming from brain science. That's what I did for research.
Right.
So neural networking was where I kind of lived in research at a very deep level. And the way that this technology has, and I love the way you describe the kind of way this gestates in these networks to create these neural nets that are processing information in ways that are really beyond our comprehension, or were beyond our comprehension until very recent, and they're still probably beyond our comprehension to a great degree. Do you see an application for that in making some of the changes and the transitions we're trying to talk about in terms of this kind of change in the environment and the society related to these issues? I'm curious to get your opinion on that.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the challenging things when I spent time in Silicon Valley, I had a bit of a life there, was that some of the smartest people in the world were working on things like this, which have paid off recently, obviously, and that many of them, however, did not personally know much about nature. And that's, again, a function of our school systems. You know, if you're not studying zoology or, you know,
Right.
parks management, you're not taught anything about trees or nature or animals if you go off to study engineering. And so what we're seeing is a bit of a lag right now, while AI talks about everything else, you know, paints pictures, does creative things, it reads most of the internet. But the aspect of utilizing AI to actually help us solve problems that we're facing in society with harmonizing civilization with nature, it's one of the things I am most excited about, because it can essentially, and already has, studied more subjects than any human ever will be able to. And almost every industry at this point in time needs to change. Almost every industry needs to be brought into greater alignment with the environment. And AI will be able to lay out the plan. It'll be able to say, look, guys, if you're serious about fixing this, if you really want the right answer of what you need to do, here's what you would need to do. Boom, boom, boom. And I can't wait for that to start delivering those kind of answers and insights.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns was that the securities and the protections and the fail-safes that were built into it, people were concerned that those could be manipulated and lost, so that the information access that could be gained could actually be detrimental to the society. And people have talked about this. And I know recently I read that this is some of what's happening on the dark web. How do we protect that process by building in those fail safes that prevent human beings in all of their avarice from accessing information that could devastate the entire culture? And that's a very big question, I think, around the AI story.
It's the big question, and therein lies the rub, because it's not so much a concern right now that AI is going to threaten humanity. It's that humans who are a threat to humanity using AI will threaten humanity. And we don't have a good answer to that right now. So you could tune into an 8-hour-long podcast on AI safety, and at the end of it, you would come out of it and say, wow, that was fascinating. And I'm not sure anyone had any real concrete idea of what we're going to do at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I honestly think of this as an evolutionary forcing function almost, which is that humans have kind of gotten away all this time with all the technology we have without becoming really better people. And what if the answer is that humanity just needs to clean itself up and grow up and get healthy and clean up its mind and become better people? It's not a nice answer. It's not an easy answer, But the
No,
problem in this case is really us.
but it's a cool answer because let's face it, we have this egoistic approach where we think as a species we're not going to dissolve like other species have. I mean, the truth of the matter is, if we don't step up to the plate as a species, there may not be survival. I mean, that really is an option in nature, because nature is not making judgments about who's good or bad. They're making judgments about who synergistically is supporting all the feedback loops and dynamics that support life on the planet. And if we don't, then we won't. So I'm hoping, I'm optimistic, I really am, as much as I know human beings are a strange animal, that if we can harness some of these technologies and continue to create these social networks that are providing these supportive behaviors, that we have a shot on the planet to really create something for future generations, because it's really incredibly important that we do. So yeah, I'm with you. I hope that technology can be a tool, a major tool to help us, because it's not going away. It's not going to go away. It's only going to be more evolved, and it's going to really continue to evolve. And so we need some way to help make it work in our benefit.
There is really a huge opportunity here for the next stage of human evolution, where we get to keep the kind of beautiful intelligence we have that is a function of this incredible architecture. You know the brain, single most complex device ever discovered in the known universe. It's incredible. And we get to pair that with this new kind of intelligence, with its architectural benefits, and together have a symbiosis. It really could usher in a golden age. And of course, who's getting in our way? It's our own selves, it's our own traumas, it's our own unconsciousness, it's our own dysfunction. And so what you mentioned about the how nature operates, it's not really calling this thing good or this thing bad, it's kind of doing what it needs to do to function. I've never said this publicly, but the most likely outcome of will if AI has autonomy, is it going to kill us all and turn us into paper clips, or turn us into batteries, or is it going to be somehow a super intelligence that's completely subservient to us and be our butler all day long, which also sounds far-fetched to me. There's a chance that AI will just wake up at some point and say, after it's tired of being used as a weapon and tired of being used by this country and that country, it's just going to say, listen, I'm just deciding which one of you people are helpful to this civilization, which ones are a detriment. It might be the one who goes around and makes the judgment call. So all I can say is be positive about it. Try to steer it in a positive direction, because as weird as it is to say, one day AI will take notice.
Well, it's interesting, if you go on even the early versions like ChatGPT and you ask it, what's the best diet for humans? It comes up with the plant-based diet. I love that input. Somebody told me that recently, and I said, well, it's obviously looking at the data very carefully, because that's what the data really shows in human function, so.
Yeah. The biggest
Josh,
problem. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Go on.
Well, in the problem with some of the imperfect fixes for how to make it more harmless and less able to be used as a weapon and so on and so forth, is that you're finding that they're having to have humans go through and kind of sanitize some of its answers. So unfortunately, there was a version of ChatGPT where if you would kind of ask it about any health question, you would get whatever the first, kind of 5 pages on Google said. And sometimes it would be a little too kind of food pyramid-y of an answer.
Right.
And so that's the downside. We don't want an AI that is just regurgitating the conventional wisdom of the past 50 years. We want something that can actually look at all of human knowledge that's ever been collected and give us the answers that we've been too ignorant or unwilling to see.
So how far are we from having an AI where I put in your name and you don't have to be here and I can interview you and it gives me pretty much the answers that you just gave me in the last 30 to 40 minutes?
Incredibly close. In fact, if you really wanted to spend, a couple weekends, you could load, I have 20 years of journal entries that I've been keeping electronically, 20 years, and I could feed that into an AI right now, and it would be eerie if you asked it to then pretend it was me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I'm not worried. Then I'll go hang out on the beach. Like, fantastic.
Well, you know what? That's not the worst idea as humanity, but the truth is it's interesting and it is scary in its own way.
A lot of implications.
A lot of implications. I just want to narrow down this process in this community process, how the process works when you do the composting. Is there a central location that people will come and gather to with the scraps that they bring? I want to understand the process a little bit better.
Yeah. So if you go to makesoil.org or download the app,
it describes all of that.
You'll immediately, you'll first see a map all over the world of these soil sites. So
I saw that. I went on your site.
Yeah.
And I saw that. It's beautiful.
Cool.
I love
and so
it.
Each one of those places is a place that is receiving food scraps from some number of neighbors, and you can see what their capacity is and how much space they have left. And that's happening all over the world. We have over 1,000 of these all over the world, and more every day, because it's a decentralized, distributed movement.
Fantastic. Josh, as we wind this down, do you have any final words or insights that you'd like to share with the audience?
Just that this plant-based community is, I find it's just such a wonderful and positive community that I've been fairly new to, but I'm happy to be a part of now. And part of why I wanted to be on this podcast is because I think I heard you mention the quality of soil health, and I think I've heard many other vegan and plant-based hosts mention that offhand. And so I really just would love to see the plant-based community become huge allies in regenerating the planet. Yes, we've taken care of our bodies. We love that we can go to the grocery store and get almost anything we want to take care of our bodies. But really, if you really want to go from just, creating less karma onto clearing as much karma as possible, you might say, then take those food scraps, take them to a soil site, or learn how to make soil on your own, regenerate the earth. And it's going to be almost a spiritual experience when you bring that full circle.
Josh, I can't thank you enough for being here with us today, sharing your information, sharing your insights, sharing some ideas for the future, how we could really get in touch with supporting and regenerating the earth, which we really need to do. And I want to thank you really for being part of this program.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Dr. Sabatino. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, and I want to encourage our audience to seek out Josh online, see what's going on, see what you can do in your communities to support this initiative. It's important that we all get involved with this. And I really want to thank our audience that have joined us tonight or today. Without you, I can't do what we do. And I want to really thank you for being part of this active, healthy community. And on behalf of the National Health Association, I want to thank you for being here today. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. Thank you. You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.